Thank you.
Thanks, honey. Good morning, y'all. Again, my name's Calvin. I work with eating disorders a lot, and so a lot of what we're wanting to talk about today is, as Anna said, how to best prepare ourselves and be aware of the things that we're dealing with in our perspective of food so that that doesn't continue to be projected onto our kids, or they don't take things that are not best for them. So, a lot of the work that I do, whether it's with families, with adolescents, with adults, it centers around fear. Fear seems to be a foundational piece, whether it's just disordered eating or over time it has developed into a full-on eating disorder. And is it always the parent's fault? No, even though historically therapy has loved to say like, well, it's always the parents. Okay, we play a part in that, and of course our culture, their friends, all that kind of stuff plays into it as well. So whether it's fear from what they experience at home with a relationship with food or fear they experience from other people, that is a common ground for where things like this come from. And so fear creates rigidity. It doesn't allow wisdom. So often we believe that, okay, well, if I instill this belief, if I show them this is not okay, and that it's more of a fear-driven thing that creates a lot of rules and strictness, which doesn't allow them to, a child or even ourselves, to navigate, okay, what does my body need? Does this feel good for me? Does this not feel good for me? And be aware and connected to ourselves, which is going to be a big theme in the conversation today, is how do I protect and maintain that body-mind connection for myself and teach my kids how to do that too and remain connected to their bodies throughout their life. A big part of that, especially in the earlier days, is building confidence around hunger and fullness. Good night. Hunger is a God-given thing. With our son-to-be, he is going to scream, he's going to cry when he's hungry. We just know when we're hungry. However, fullness is something that we experience and learn over time. And what I mean by that, yes, we can know when we're full, but often diet culture and fullness can come to a head to say like, well, I shouldn't eat this thing. Oh no, that's not good for me. Okay, now that's too much. We get ahead of ourselves and start to get stuck in our heads rather than being able to listen to our body and, okay, where am I at today? What do I need? Am I full, or am I just telling myself I'm full because I shouldn't do this, or I've already had too much, whatever it may be. Rules override, or should not override our body's wisdom and our awareness to it. And that's where a lot of the restrictive behaviors and or unhealthy behaviors come into play, is when we start to over-intellectualize food and the different rules that we have for it. So as I mentioned, a lot of what we teach our kids is, yes, we're going to teach them about specific food groups, and okay, it's good to have a balance of this and to that. They're also going to take how we relate to food, how we talk about food, how we talk about our bodies. And so it's not just what we say, but it's also the tone that we use or the way we experience food or respond to food. A common thing around the holidays that I'll hear parents that I work with say is like, oh man, I had way too much. And like, okay, sure, we've all said that. All right, man, I really shouldn't. I'm like, no, I can't do that because I'm gonna regret it later. These small messages over time teach our kids like, oh man, this is something I need to stay away from. This is something to be feared. This is something to not do, or else I'm going to feel that way, or my parents may think that about me. It starts to teach these subconscious lessons of, hey, it's not okay to enjoy food in this moment. It's not okay to enjoy food to this extent. And of course, the thought of like, well, I don't want my kid to learn to have too much and just eat everything all the time. I'm going to get to that. Being able to enjoy it though, and being mindful of how we speak about it is a really important piece. And this plays into how hunger cues get disrupted. Often when we talk about food in the way of it's junk food, it's dirty, it's unsafe, we begin, not only subconsciously as adults, but also our kids begin to learn like, hey, I can't trust my body. I have to be the dictator of it. I can't listen to it. It's going to lead me astray. It's going to tell me the things I don't want or I shouldn't want. And that just disconnects us all the more. And often, whether it's medication that's taken to try and limit what we eat or specific diet plans, more often than not, those revert and either we gain the weight right back, we go back to these old behaviors, or it's actually worse on the back end than we went into it originally trying to change or to influence our patterns and behaviors. And so it starts with that restrictive behavior, creating a lot of rules, leads to the disconnection from our body, which doesn't allow us to be aware of what our body needs, where it's at throughout the day. And then, as you can see, dysregulation can bring restriction, binging, and guilt. And that's often kids will they'll learn these things at home, and they may follow the rules because they don't want to get in trouble, they don't want to lose privileges, all that kind of thing, those types of things. But then if they go to a friend's house, they may binge and just have like an excessive amount of something. They're like, oh man, I wasn't allowed to have this at home, so I'm going to take it all in here. Or they begin to hide things and feel like they have to keep a secret from their parents in order to be able to enjoy what their body's like. Hey, I really want to try this. And so that moderation and being willing to have exposure to different things, that's a very important piece to this. And that's what I'm going to get to next, or after this slide. When children are raised in a very rigid system, they, again, like I mentioned, tend to hide and create more shame around food. That this isn't something to be discussed. This is something I need to keep to myself, and I need to be afraid of. And that's just not what we want for our kids, because in exposing them to environments and being able to teach them like, hey, it's okay. You know what, on holiday season, you know what, I may have had more than I usually do. You know what, that's okay. Like, it's gonna go back to normal. And then that, as the season passes, hey, it's okay to enjoy food in this time. It's okay for our bodies to change. That's a natural part of life. Just like it changes one direction, it can change back. Our bodies are incredibly adaptive. And so when we teach this lesson that we have to fear what change is, or fear different types of foods and or ingredients, it just does not go well over time. And modeling that is a very important thing. And so this is what I was getting to a moment ago, that so often parents will get stuck on, and I do it too, when my son is not finishing his dinner for a night or two, or not eating a specific kind of food I'd want him to. I'm like, oh man, is he ever gonna do this? Oh man, is he ever gonna drink a bottle of water again? Is he only gonna do all these other things? I have to remind myself too, we have to zoom out. That just patterns are more than just a moment. That just because this is the case right now doesn't mean it's always going to be the case tomorrow or next week or next month. That if we start to see a pattern over time, okay, that's something to be addressed, that's something to be discussed. But again, more of a discussion than a rigid rule and something that has to be cracked down upon, because that's where it leads in or influences that fearful approach, rather than being aware and present with ourselves, allowing the occasional exposure. That doesn't mean harm. That it's okay to enjoy certain things every once in a while. And that's what helps protect us from that chronic fear, which actually allows us to have conversations and learn new things. That's what provides protection, is being able to communicate with our kids, not set strict rules and boundaries to where they don't do something, but to be able to navigate if or when it does happen. And so I'm going to let Anne-Marie take over for more of the long-term impacts of these things. Here you go. You already got a mic.
Yeah, I got a mic. Yeah. Thank you, Calvin. I feel like you covered so much really great information. So kind of talking about the long-term impact on mental health, I wanted to just share a few things that I see in my office. And then I want to also take some time to talk about my experience as a mom, because I feel like that's why all of y'all are here, is to hear from moms and just to learn. So a lot of the things that I see in my office, so I work with both eating disorders, and then I also do some parent coaching of people in recovery. And when I'm doing parent coaching, working with parents, a lot of the times, like, what I'm seeing is parents just don't know until they know. Like, they don't know the things that they're doing that could not be great for their kids' relationships with food, but then once they know better, they try to do better. So I think one big thing is that the way that you talk about your own body and food matters. So like, if you're talking about yourself and you're saying like, oh, well, I need to go on a diet, or oh, I need to lose weight, like, your kids are going to hear that, even if you're not talking about their bodies. They hear that and they pick up, oh, well, I think mom is really pretty, but she's saying that she's not. And kids are sponges. And I'm sure all of y'all know that. But everything that you do sends a message. And so I know Calvin's going to talk about reframing here in a little bit, but But just a few things that I think are really common for parents to say, or for moms specifically to say. So like, for example, I have to put on makeup to be pretty. I think I hear that one pretty frequently. And so reframing that instead of like, okay, like let's not teach our daughters that they need makeup to be pretty. Like, I want to wear makeup because I want to feel fancy. And it's the same idea, but instead of teaching little girls like, oh, women need to put on makeup to be pretty, it's like, no, like, I want to feel fancy, which is so much more fun. So kind of what Calvin was saying earlier, like it's not all about what you say, but it's about how you say it. And like thinking about how that impacts your kids' mental health. I think that everyone here like, wants their kids to have really positive mental health and to have, to be happy children. I think that that's what everyone wants for their children. And I think another really important thing here too is not only is it important to work on like the way that you're talking about food, the way that you're talking about your body, but I think it's also important to let the Lord in too. And so if you feel like you're struggling just with the way that you're viewing food for yourself or the way that you're viewing your own body, instead of saying it out loud, say it to the Lord and like bring it in prayer, because I mean, the Lord's going to hear you regardless. And so letting him into that is really important. But when you're praying in your head, your kids don't have to hear it, which is all the better for them. And then you can also share that with them. But instead of it being in a like, oh, this is how I'm viewing my body way, you can share with them like, hey, I'm really struggling, but I'm going to tell Jesus about that.
Yeah, I love that. And so as she mentioned, some of the reframing, these are just ideas. These are not like, hey, you should say this. We're going to say things, and again, a big part of it is having the conversation with a kid. So these are just suggestions, and of course, if there's additional questions, or if you ever wanted to talk through more of this, you can always reach out. And so she mentioned one. Another one that comes to mind is that's bad food. Something that could be said is like, you know what, that's food that only gives quick energy. And I want you to be able to have so much more energy to be able to play and go hang out with your friends. And so here's another food that's gonna let you have more energy throughout the day and do all the things you want to do, be able to have fun. That's junk. Another way that could be said is that food is for fun and enjoyment. Like we want to do something really fun. We want to do something special. Okay, let's enjoy this for right now. That's unhealthy. Again, it's probably going to be said every once in a while. Another way to think about this or to communicate it is that food doesn't help us stay full for very long. Like if you're not wanting to be, you're going to be playing with your friends, you're going to be doing a lot, we're going to be doing a lot today, you're not going to be hungry very soon, so we're going to add this to it, or I need you to continue to eat this so that you're going to be full to do what you want to do. We don't eat that. Another way to say it is we eat different foods for different reasons. And that one, it's like, well, that sounds almost the exact same. Just having that short, blunt part of it is just like that can create a lot of separation and disconnection from other people. And it's like, well, mom says we don't eat that. And they may even say that to their friends. It's just, okay, well, we eat different things. It's like, okay, well, different people do different things. And so those are just some ideas.
Yeah, and I think to add on that too, I think our culture and society puts a lot of pressure specifically on women to eat in a certain way, and that leads to us feeling guilty for eating. And I always tell people guilt has no place at the dinner table because nowhere in Scripture does it say that eating is a sin. Like, you can eat cake, that's not a sin. Now, I think that, there's nuance to it. We can go into the heart posture. That's not to say that eating is never a sin. I'm not making a blanket statement. But I'm saying when you're sitting down for a meal, guilt has no place at the table. And when we think about it, you're sitting in a restaurant and, you hear somebody at a table right next to you and they're saying, oh, I'm eating this food, it's really bad, I'm gonna have to work really hard tomorrow, or whatever is, the common thing. But that feeds into this idea that certain foods are good and certain foods are bad. And I'm a dietitian, so I get a lot of pushback on that all the time. Well, aren't certain foods better for you than others? I'm not talking about nutrient density. I'm talking about the moral value that I think it's really easy to place on certain foods. And so I always say there's no good foods and bad foods. Like Calvin was saying, that reframe. Like, there are certain foods that give you energy for longer than other foods, yes. But you should never feel guilty for eating a food that our society might say is bad. And when we do talk about food like that, just like I was saying earlier, our kids are picking that up because they're sponges. Um, I always like to talk about like the purpose of guilt and see how like why guilt doesn't have a place when it comes to eating. So we know that if you're in Christ, you have the Holy Spirit, and so the Holy Spirit helps us to feel guilty for sin so that we confess and repent. So, for example, if you steal food, that's sin. So you probably should feel guilty for stealing food. But if you're eating, say, a food that is less nutrient dense, you should not feel guilty for eating that food. And if you notice that you are feeling guilty for eating that food, then pray about it. I think the best thing that we can do for our kids in fostering a healthy relationship with food for them is to make sure that we're practicing it ourselves. So yeah, I always like to go back to that guilt piece and give that reminder of like, hey, foods that are less nutrient dense should not make you feel guilty. And if they do, then pray about it.
Yeah, great. And then are you open to us shifting to the takeaways? Because I know we have quite a few questions that are coming up. Great.
Oh, yeah.
And a real quick thing, the difference from guilt and shame, those can be very different. Shame is more of like, I am bad and I am wrong for doing this. Guilt is like, okay, I don't feel great about doing this, and that I just wanted to add that piece in there that neither shame or guilt belong with food. And so any takeaways that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think a big takeaway that I haven't covered yet is that God gave us food to enjoy. Like, he very well could have made us run off of fuel like a car, he could have made us however he wanted, but he gave us food to enjoy. And if food wasn't important to Jesus, then he never would have sat and eaten with his disciples. When we think about it, Jesus' first miracle was at a wedding feast. He was eating in community. He also called himself the bread of life. And so food is obviously really important to Jesus, and that enjoyment piece is so important. And so if you feel like you're having a hard time enjoying food, I feel like I sound like a broken record, but pray about it, but also seek help. There are resources, there are people to support you in bringing back that enjoyment, because food is something that should be enjoyed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we jump to questions?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And I know, how are we doing the questions?
I'll read them and hand it back.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, over here. Sorry, you guys. If you have any questions, put them in now so that they can get answered. The QR code on the table. Yeah, here it is. So there's some questions coming up about food dyes. What do we do about truly harmful ingredients in food, like dyes that affect our kids?
I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great dietitian question, and I get it all the time. So with the food dyes, I feel like it's difficult. I always say, like Calvin was saying earlier, it's more about like giving that permission. And so like if they have that unconditional permission to eat, then you're giving your kids like, okay, like maybe they'll have something with the food dye, maybe they won't. But it's really just about that permission. And if you say, okay, well, we're not gonna have anything with red 40 in the house, then as soon as the kid goes to their friend's house and there's red velvet cakes out on the kitchen table, what's the first thing that they're gonna eat? More than one red velvet cupcake. So I think it's about just giving that permission, but also, like Calvin had said earlier, giving credit to your kids, because I think that when it comes to food, kids are more intelligent than we give them credit for. And so instead of saying like, that's bad, really talk to them about like the difference. So like, okay, like this food that has a food dye in it, like this isn't gonna give you energy for very long. So we can have, let's do something else, and then we can come back to that. Instead of like, no, you can't have this, like let's give options. And I always like to think of, instead of what can we take away, what can we add to the diet? And so like maybe with things like food dyes, like, okay, maybe we have some options, but we have a lot of options. And kids will gravitate towards things that give them energy and things that are satiating. So I think what's more important than like, let's eliminate these foods is what are some things that we can give so that our kids have lots of options.
Yeah. And the only thing that I wanted to add to that is that research-based, I wrote this down to make sure I didn't mix it up. research debates do not require a moral conclusion. That's a lot of what our kids are going to take away. That, okay, you are their parent. You get to make these choices. That is your right, obviously. And to be aware that in doing so, that is likely going to create fear and/or separation when they're with their peers or other things, and that has impacts in other ways down the road. And so every choice has an impact. And as their parents, we have that right to make that decision. So great question.
I will add, I grew up in a house without no food dyes before new food dyes was a thing, and sometimes I have the urge to just guzzle food dye by itself. So I do think sometimes when we restrict something, it can cause our body is not really designed to restrict.
Yeah.
Forbidden things become really enticing, and I definitely found that to be my experience. How do I get my picky eater to try new things?
Ooh, this is a fun one. How do I get my kid to eat more? Consistency and pre-communicated expectations. That, of course, there's going to be consequences. Something that we do in our home is when he was young and learning how to eat food, it's okay, dude, you don't want to have this for dinner? Okay, that's fine. You're going to have it for breakfast. That's fine. And continuing to have healthy boundaries with our kids and not come down on them. And do I get frustrated when he's saying, I don't know how to use a spoon, you need to feed me? Of course I do. And I have to take a step away or ask Anna to tap in, even though she's exhausted from creating life, so that I'm not just in that moment creating shame for him doing something that he's either concerned about, anxious about, or just uncomfortable. And so being aware in those moments how we're presenting and communicating is a big piece of that. Is that going to make them eat all the food? No. But it's going to help them not continue to fear, okay, next time when I'm uncomfortable and I don't want this, I'm just going to have to double down and shut down this much, that much harder to make my parent not do what I want them, or help my parent do what I want them to do. And again, boundaries are the biggest piece, and that is really hard. Yes.
So when he asks you to feed him with the spoon, even though he knows how to use
Yep.
it, do y'all go ahead and just feed him?
Are there times we do? Absolutely, because I'm just tired. What I prefer to do, or I do more often than not, is hey man, okay, if you're choosing to do that, you're also choosing not to do this fun thing after. You can make that choice, that's fine. I just want you to know that your choice has a consequence. And we use that language with him. If he doesn't have dinner, if he doesn't finish his dinner, okay, hey, we're not gonna watch Bluey before bedtime. And so he's you know what, okay, I understand. And sometimes he didn't finish dinner, and it's totally fine. And that's just kind of how it is. So again, having those boundaries in place that hey, you can make this decision, and that decision has this impact, and being consistent with that.
So I will add to that. So I don't have experience with a picky eater. My little guy loves food, and it's a ton of fun. But I do have clinical experience working with people with picky eating. So the research shows that it actually takes about 15 exposures for a child to accept food. And that's not to like a food, but for them to accept it. So big thing is just offering variety. So my little guy loves to throw plates, so he eats straight off the high chair tray. So I'll put all kinds of things on the high chair tray. He might not finish it all. He might throw some of it on the floor. But even if he throws it on the floor, that's still an exposure.
Yeah.
And so if there's a certain food that you're really wanting them to eat, or a certain food group, doing lots of exposures before they finally take the bite, that's not a failure. If they don't eat it, but it was on their plate, that's an exposure. If they just looked at it and maybe touched it with their fork, or honestly just sat there and looked at it, that's an exposure. But just offering that variety is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so into this one, and we'll go to the next question.
My picky eater will absolutely refuse. I set the boundary of you don't
Yeah.
this, it's your preference. He will refuse.
Yeah.
I'm having to go days without food.
Yeah.
Before he eats it. How can I get him to at least try this?
Yes. Our son went, I think, 24 hours one time, and that, as you mentioned, that he can go days. Days. There's a balance there. I get it. And that clinically, it's to be consistent with the boundary, and I understand nutritionally, it's kind of okay, I don't want my kid to pass out. And so that is really tricky. There is no one. Do you have anything you want to add to
I
that?
do. So what I would do is offer accepted foods too. So if you know that like there are certain things that he will accept, put them both on the plate. If it's just going to be a battle, then just give him the food that he'll accept. Um, what's really important is making sure that they have carb, protein, fat. And so like say for example, they'll accept a piece of string cheese. Okay, put a piece of string cheese on the plate. And then if that's all they eat, that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But just making sure that there's at least something on the plate that they'll accept.
Yeah. So working it in with it. It's, again, that exposure piece. Okay.
Okay.
We have a lot of questions, and we're not gonna be able to get to all of them for time's sake. So you guys answer these really fast. How do I encourage a knowledge of wastefulness while honoring body awareness?
Sorry, was that first part? Waste?
How do I acknowledge wastefulness?
Yeah.
While still honoring body awareness?
Ooh. So what wastefulness? That's what I'm trying to figure. Like wasting food. Ooh. That's
I
yeah.
have a few thoughts.
Go for it.
So I'm
great
personally
question.
doing a baby-led weaning approach. And so especially at the beginning, we had a pretty decent amount of food waste because, I mean, if y'all have let a baby self-feed, a lot of it ends up on the floor.
Yeah.
So I think kind of zooming out and looking at the big picture, like